welcome back everyone. So here is what we have right now. You can select the X and the Y. You can see the distribution of each thing on the stats tab here. And here is what we want to go to. So you see I'm actually drawing the mean and the standard deviation over this. And the reason for this is because now we can control outliers by that standard deviation. So we'll have an option here to remove outliers. And right now it's set at 3, so it removes anything beyond there. So you don't see that 120-year-old. We can modify this to be whatever we want. So we can say 1.6 standard deviation. So you see it appears right here. So that's where we want to go, so let's get into it. Alright, so the first thing that I kind of want to do here is I want to make a new function called, what we'll call this, calculate stats. And so this is going to calculate your mean and your standard deviation for you. So we're going to take in the data frame and then the column that we want to generate the stat on. So, and then to calculate the mean, so pandas has a built-in way to do this. So all we need to do is we need to reference the data frame and the column, and then we can just do the mean function here. And then for standard deviation, we can do, pandas also has a built-in function for this, so it'll be the same thing, df column, and then dot standard deviation is going to be std, and then we will just return both of these in a tuple. Okay, cool. So now we have the both of those. So what we want to do is we will change this to just, so I want to do some more in clean data here. So we'll just set this to a variable for now. So the new filtered data frame. And then we'll say x mean and then x standard deviation. I'll call that standard deviation instead of STD, just better that way. And this will call our calculated stats on the filtered data frame that we have. And then we have access up here into what the x-axis is. So we'll do that and return those, and then we're going to take that and we want to do the same for the y-axis. So change this to y, and then change this to y, and then so when we're returning, we still want to return the data frame like we had before, but we also want to return the mean and the standard deviations for each axis here. So what we'll do is we will use tuples for each of these. So we'll say x mean, x standard deviation, and then we'll also return another tuple for the y mean and the y standard deviation. And then over on the main function here, our data frame, we just want to return these as well. So we'll say x mean, x standard deviation, And notice these are being returned as tuples. So like I was saying before, these are kind of like immutable data types, so we don't really expect this to change all that much. Okay, so we have that now. Now we want to go down to the stats tab here, and what we can do is we'll have a column below each of these. So we'll say col equals, I'm not sure if we've done this before, but in order to make columns in Streamlit, you can just say st.columns, and then that returns an iterable over to whatever variable that you put there. So now we can say like with col 0 because of 0 index, right? And so we want to since this is just going to correspond to the x-axis, we want to put that up here, and then just do st.markdown so I can make some pretty markdown. And then this just going to say what the x-axis is. And do one for the mean and one for the standard deviation. And this will just be x mean, and then we'll use some Python formatting to, this will say that the floating point number, which is this guy, x mean, this will only go out to 2 decimal places. So then we'll want basically the same thing for the standard deviation. Oops. Oh my goodness. Okay, that's better. And then we'll just copy this guy up here. And x standard deviation. And then we're basically going to want to do the same thing for the y-axis here. And save that. And bring over the CrossFit data here. As long as I didn't make any errors. Okay. We have the mean of 33.3. Oh, whoops. I didn't change the labels. So let me just go ahead and do that. Got ahead of myself. That's the trouble that I find with copying and pasting sometimes. So it's very easy to just copy and paste and then forget to change things. Okay, so if I bring that back over, age mean, age standard deviation, height mean, height standard deviation. Okay, so an average age of 33.3 and an average height of about 70.5 inches. So now what I want to do is I want to add vertical lines for the mean and the standard deviation. So we'll be putting in some parameters here for the mean and the standard deviation. We'll include one other called the number of standard deviations, and that's going to be how many standard deviations we want to show. And we'll make this a default parameter in Python, or a named parameter rather is what it's called. And so that just sets it so that if the user doesn't set anything, this is what it will be. So the first thing that we'll do is we'll add the mean. So Plotly has a function called add vertical line. Well, add v-line, but add vertical line. So you can see here that first it takes a parameter for the x, and that's just going to be the mean that we have. And then the next one is the line dash, which is going to be how we want the line to actually appear, and we'll just have that be a solid line for right now. And then the color, we'll have that be the line color, and we'll set that to green. That can be any standard color that's recognized, like red or green or something, or a hex value. And then the annotation text that we want to use, annotation text equals, we're just going to call it the mean. And then we'll have one more for the annotation position. And this will just be top right. Okay. Now to generate the standard deviations, what we're going to do is, this will be where the number of standard deviations comes into play. So the number of standard deviations is how many we want to display, right? So we'll create a loop here that goes from 1 all the way to the number of standard deviations. And then we'll do pretty much the same thing as up here. So I'm just going to copy and paste this guy. So now if you remember from math class, way back in the day, what we're going to do is the mean plus the standard deviation times I. And so I is going to be, it's going to be 1 the first time, second time that we go through. So that's why, because when we calculate the actual place on the plot that we want to put the standard deviation, we use that formula of the mean times the number of standard deviations outward. And then, so similarly here, we're going to want standard deviations going the other way as well. So this will just be minus standard deviation. And then what else we want to do is we want to change the annotation text, be plus 1, and then the omega symbol, which I'm just going to copy and paste that because I don't remember how to actually generate that thing. Oh, and this should be an F string. And then we're going to copy and paste this. And this will be minus the amount of standard deviations. And then, okay, so we have a function built out. Now, if we go to main, when we generate the histogram, we want to add a few more parameters into here. So we'll want to do the x mean and the x standard deviation. And remember, the number of standard deviations name parameter, so we don't actually need to replicate that. And then we will just set this to the y value right here. So now, if we bring this back up, everything's green here. I was going to make it red, so let's just make a small change to that. Call that red. And let's make this into a dashed line. Actually, that'll look a little bit better. Invalid property. Oh, it has to be dash rather than dashed. Okay. And there we go. So now we have those on there. So, alright, we can start adding to this sidebar to control that. One thing that I just noticed too is that we're only showing 4 standard deviations. And so that is because this for loop, when you say for in range, it goes up to 1 before this number. So it often does that because things in programming are 0 based. So if we just do a +1 to this, there we go. Now we have our 5th standard deviation. So if we specify 5, we get 5, which is more of the expected result. Alright, so adding in the vertical lines, that might be a good place to stop because the video is getting a little bit long again. But what we have left to do is I want to actually start adding in the slider controls. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.